Welcome to What I Read in September. So for the month of September, I read 22 books. One of them was a thriller. One of them was a young adult, which honestly was an accident. I thought it was just a regular adult fantasy mystery murder book, but it was like a kid's book. The next one is I read 5 romances, and I read 15 cozies. So we're going to go through all of those today, just like I did before in my new format. We're going to go by genre, and then within each genre, I'll go from the ones that are 5 stars all the way to the ones that were 1 star. So there's like a wide range this month. Like there's some 5s, there's some 1s, 3s, 2s. It's all over the place. Hi everyone, I'm Lissa, author of the Frost and Misfortunes Cozy Mystery Series starring my own little kitty cat, Lucky. On this channel, we talk all about mysteries, whether those are books, TV shows, or movies. So if this sounds like you or something you might be interested in, make sure to hit the subscribe button below. I post new videos every Tuesday. All right, so let's get into that list. We're going to start out with the one-offs first. So the first one was a thriller, and that was the Andromeda strain by Chrichton, who is the famous author and creator of Jurassic Park. And this one is, I gave it a 3, and this is about satellites that go off into space, collect like dust and particles for us to study, and one of them ends up crash landing into Arizona, and then everybody in the town like turns up dead. And so the investigation starts out, it's like very exciting, very intriguing, and then it kind of plateaued. I don't even know what happened. Like nothing was really happening, nothing new was being discovered. And then when you find out like the cause of it, it's kind of like anticlimactic, if that makes sense. Like you're waiting for this big reveal. And so anyway, so that's why I gave it a 3. And then the next book is the young adult book, which honestly, like I said, I read it on accident. It's The 4 Dead Queens by Astrid Scholte, and I gave this book a 1 because it sounded amazing. It's a murder mystery set inside a fantasy. Like, what more could you possibly want? However, it was like a huge, so first of all, she's a thief and she drinks something or eats something, and then all of a sudden she has visions of these 4 queens that are dead, as the title implies. And they have a kingdom that for some reason has been divided up into 4 regions. Each queen rules one of them, but she can never visit the land. And so it didn't make any sense. Like the world building, I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't understand why, despite there were lots of info dumping in the book on how things worked, but not really the reason that they were working that way, if that makes sense. So I really didn't understand like any of the rules, first of all. And then also when you get the reveal again at the end of who the killer is, it's not even someone. So the number one rule usually in cozies is you're looking at the characters, trying to figure out like who killed who. And again, maybe it's because it's a mystery inside of a fantasy, but we don't even like meet the killer until like maybe like one of the last couple of chapters. So you're like, I could never have figured it out, or I don't know. So that was a 1. And again, because it was about kids, it's about a teenager. I thought it was going to be about adults, but it was not. And it does kind of have a romance in there, but yeah, it didn't, it's like, it wasn't that exciting either. So that was not a redeeming quality of the book either. All right, so let's move on. Let's go on to actual romances. So I read 5 of them. And the first one is a 5. It is A Spot of Trouble by Teri Wilson. So if you didn't know this, I'm a huge fan of Teri Wilson. I did not discover any of her books, even though I've known her for like ever. I'm just like lazy. Like I said, until this year, I really haven't been reading books. And so, you know, I saw her covers and I'm like, oh, that's great. That's cute. But I finally like got around to reading her books and I absolutely love them. And I think the reason I love her books, and hopefully this will determine for you whether or not they're something you want to read, is that they're like Hallmark and they're like happy and they're cheery. They're sweet romances. So there's no sex and everything's like uplifting and like it makes you feel good, right? Like a chick lit kind of novel. And so this one was no exception. And I think I mentioned I give this book a 5. So this is about a woman who has a Dalmatian, which hello, points for having a dog that's an actual breed that we recognize. And she meets up with this fireman who also has a Dalmatian, but of course they're like total opposites. So she is like creative and an artist and she plays instruments. And so her dog, she just like lets it do whatever and it's kind of happy. And so his dog though is like military precise, follows orders directly. So their dogs end up getting swapped. They look like exactly like, even their spots are the same. And so when she takes his dog home, she's like really confused because the dog like listens to everything she says, which has never happened before. And then his dog, he's like really confused because it won't do anything that he tells it to do. And then when they end up switching dogs back, they find out the dogs have been like ruined. So his perfectly military precise dog now doesn't listen to him anymore, and hers like actually listens. So it's kind of cute. Anyways, lots of things happen in between that are adorable. The next two books are Jill Shalvis books, which I am also a huge fan of Jill Shalvis as well. She's not as much chick lit as Teri. She's a little bit more serious, but not like in a depressing way at all. But I still love her books. The first one is Chasing Christmas Eve, and this is number 4 in the Heartbreaker Bay movies. And I think maybe Bay is because it takes place in San Francisco. But I gave this book a 5. So this is about a YA fantasy author. How funny is that? Who's like super famous and makes a ton of money. And so she has 2 younger brothers who like treat her like she's their mom, and she has to do everything and pay for everything. So she just like wants a break from everything. And she escapes to San Francisco. I can't remember why she picked San Francisco. I think she just wanted to go to the polar opposite side of the country. And she just happens to run into this super mega smart like billionaire, and he offers to let her stay at the apartment building that he owns in one of like, I guess, a furnished apartment. And then they end up falling in love. The next book is also by Jill Shalvis. This is Animal Attraction, and this is number 2 in the Animal Magnetism series. And I gave this book a 5. This is about a woman who's in Chicago, and then something traumatic happens, and so she just wants to get away from the big city. So she escapes to this tiny town in Idaho and ends up working for a veterinarian as the assistant or the receptionist, but she's like way overqualified for the job. And she has a stray cat. Like every Jill Shalvis movie, like 2 things. One, she has like a cute animal, and she also has like some guy who's super nice. So I would say like a beta male, but he's not like that jerk alpha male. So that's why I also really like her books. But this guy happens to be very hunky and very strong. And so she's like really scared from her incident in Chicago. So he like helps her learn self-defense and like helps her like become more empowered and self-confident. So it's a very cute story. So that was the 3rd romance. And then the 4th romance is The Stand-In by Lily Chiu. And I gave this book a 1, which I feel really bad about because it's an Asian-owned voices. And so I like so wanted it to be a 5. But basically, it's about a woman who is like the direct like mirror image of this famous Chinese actress. And this actress wants to be free to do, I don't know, whatever. And so she wants this other woman to stand in and pretend to be her at like photo events and other things. And she's going to pay her an obscene amount of money in exchange for doing this. And then of course she ends up falling in love with his co-star, and I don't know, the whole thing just seemed kind of contrived and hokey, and I didn't really like any of the characters. So that was the reason I kind of gave it a 1. I just kind of had to force myself to keep reading it. Like there was really no purpose for them being together, or the whole situation just seemed kind of silly. And the next one, the last romance, is The Heart Principle by Helen Hoang. Now, this is number 3 in the Kiss Quotient. And again, like I said, the first book I really liked. The second one was like, meh. So I really had high hopes for this one. This one has been delayed like so much. Like I think it was supposed to come out last year. Then it was supposed to come out in the winter, and then the spring, and then the summer. Like it's been super delayed. So it finally came out. I gave this book a 1, which again, I feel really bad about because it's like an Asian-owned voices. I don't know why I feel more guilty about that, but I did not like it at all. And I'll tell you exactly why. Mostly because it was really depressing. Like I think my personality, and this book did get many high ratings, and I think, you know, I just personally like things that are uplifting and cheery and like make you feel good. And this just like was a huge Debbie Downer, negative Nancy kind of book. And, you know, it kind of is sad. She said it's part memoir. So basically the first part is a romance between Anna and Quan, which everyone was kind of excited about seeing Quan. The only problem is Anna at the beginning is dating this other guy that she doesn't like. And she like all the oral sex scenes read like rape scenes or something because she hates it. She can't stand it. She finds it disgusting. And, you know, regardless of your opinion on whether or not that is or isn't, you know, in romance, usually whatever the girl is doing, she likes it. She's excited about it. And so when you hear where it's like awful and torturous and punishment, you're like, is she like a prostitute? Like, why is she doing this? Like, it doesn't make any sense why anybody would do a sexual act that they absolutely find disgusting and repulsive. So anyways, it goes on to be even worse. So the next part of the book is like all about doing hospice care for this family member she hates. And then, you know, talks about cancer, and then she's suicidal. And then, you know, she's basically like completely able to do anything in life. And then this Quan guy just has to take care of her. So I just didn't really like, it didn't resonate. Again, if you like that, like kind of deep, depressing kind of books, and again, that could be like your book, and it's mostly because that just isn't my thing for reading a book at all. So that's why I gave it a 1. So Anyways, those are all the romances. So let's move on to cozies. So we're going to start out with the ones that were 5. So this month for the Cozy Tape, well, I guess it's last month by the time you're seeing this will come out in October, but for September, reread The Plot is Murder by V.M. Burns. Now, I love this book. I gave that book a 5, and I loved it so much that I instantly read every single book after that in the series. So there are 6 books in the series. The 7th one is coming out at the end of November on the 30th. I cannot wait. And so I just blew through all of the books all at once, and they all get better. So here's the thing about the books. She does an excellent job of doing the regular murder mystery and doing a historical murder mystery that she's writing about. So, or the character's writing about. So in each book, the main character owns this mystery bookshop store, but she also is writing historical mysteries. And they kind of mirror each other, but they're totally separate characters with a different plot. And I was completely engaged. Like, Ellery Adams tried to do the same thing in, I can't remember the name of the book that we read. It was like another book club. And it just had, here's what was wrong. In Ellery Adams' book, it was like snippets of like prose that, you know, she thought was amazing and wonderful, like the main character, but it wasn't really a story. It didn't go anywhere. And so you're just like being punished with reading this like boring paragraph about nothing that leads to nowhere. Versus in this one, the story was a story within a story. So you got 2 parallel stories going on at the same time. I don't know. I can't even tell you like how much I loved this series. Like, it's renewed my love for cozy mysteries, because for a while there, a lot of the cozies, if you didn't notice, except for the Amish ones, I've been giving them all kind of like 3s, maybe a 4 here and there, some 2s, a lot of 1s. And so I was like, maybe cozy mysteries aren't even my thing. But after reading this, it has like reaffirmed my love of cozy mysteries because it is so well done. And its own voices, which is like a huge win overall. All right, so enough said. Those are all, there's like 5 books in the series. So I read book 2, which is Red Herring Hunt, number 3, which is Novel Art of Murder, number 4, Wed, Red, and Dead, number 5, Bookmark for Murder, and number 6, Tourist Guide to Murder. And they were all 100% worth reading. So that is a wrap for those. The next book is The Unexpected Mrs. Pollifax by Dorothy Gilman. Now, I gave this book a 5, even though it is from 1966. Never even heard of it. It was actually suggested by the last author, V.M. Burns, to her characters, like her characters suggesting it to the other characters to read to start their book club. And it's about this senior citizen, Mrs. Pollifax, who wants like some adventure, and she walks into the CIA and she's like, I want to be a spy. And they're like, what? So through a series of confusion, she actually gets hired to be a spy. They think she's somebody else that came in for an interview. So she gets sent off to Cuba. She thinks she's going to just go there to buy a book, but instead she actually ends up in, or no, so I don't think it was Cuba. I think it was Mexico. And then she thought she was going to Cuba when she gets kidnapped, but instead she ends up in Albania, and she's with another spy and she has to escape. I don't know. It was so good, even though it's so old. I absolutely love this. So, that is The Unexpected Mrs. Pollifax, and I can't wait to read more books in that series. The next one is Saddled with Murder by Eileen Brady, and this is number 1 in the Dr. Kate Vet Mysteries. Now, this one is about a veterinarian, and she does house visits, right? And the only thing I didn't like about this, because I was really excited to read more about dogs and cats and their personalities, but this instead really focused on clients. And so one of her clients is murdered, and then there are other clients that like complain and hate her, and it was all about the owners and people, and not really about like the animal. Like, there was some technical, like, it did kind of gross me out a little about like different things that she had to do with the animals for examinations or procedures. It's kind of like sometimes when I watch Chicago Med or one of those like medical TV shows, you're like, oh, I can't look like at certain parts, even though the rest of the show is good. So that was kind of like me reading some of the different like medical procedure parts. So anyways, that's the only reason I gave it a 3. I will not be reading any more books in the series just because it wasn't what I expected, right? I just wanted to talk more about the animals. The next one is Frugal Lissa Finds a Body. This is number 1 in the Frugal Lissa Mysteries by Ritter James, and I give this book a 3. And honestly, I thought it said Lissa, so instead of Frugal Lissa. So I was like, oh my God, it's a book with my name in it when I was doing that search 2 weeks ago for books with my name, but that is not the case. It is Lissa with 2 S's, which is not my name. Anyways, it's about a woman who has 2 kids. She's all alone because her husband is like traveling for work or something all the time. And she has a blog where she tells people how to save money. And so she's trying to make money from her blog. And then she goes over to her neighbor's house and helps her with clearing out her garage. And she goes up and I guess it sounds like she crawls in the rafters, and she finds a dead body. And it's a realtor who has been trying to buy her neighbor's place and her place, and nobody really likes this guy. And so somehow she and her her friend get accused of the murder. I wasn't really sure how that worked, but anyways, it wasn't bad because I gave it a 3. She's like going around trying to solve stuff. I liked how she like tries to save money and tries to be frugal. But then the only part that was weird is at the very end when her husband finally does come home, she's like, oh, you're getting your expense check next week. And she's like, yeah. And she's like, well, we can definitely go out to a restaurant with that, which 2 things. 1, she's supposed to be frugal, so I would think she wouldn't want to go out to a restaurant. 2, like, I don't know how, like, she doesn't understand how expense reimbursement checks work. It is to reimburse you for money that you've paid, so you owe that money on a credit card. Like, that's not free money. Like, it was just kind of weird to me how the whole book we're going all through on, like, saving money and being thrifty, and then all of a sudden she's like, let's hire a babysitter and go spend the money that is a reimbursement. Like, she was acting like it's a bonus. It's not a bonus. Anyways, I'm sure like nobody else would probably have that gripe. They're like, why are you focusing on that one detail? Because that's just how I'm built. So the next book is Apples and Alibis by Gayle, Leeson, and this is number 4 in the Down South Cafe Mysteries. No, I did not read books 1 through 3. This came up, it had a cute cover and it popped up in script. Anyways, I gave this book a 3 and it was okay. It wasn't like, I probably won't read any more in the series, but basically she owns a cafe and someone has called her on the phone and asked her to make a food delivery for a party. It's like some old lady and she's like, we don't make deliveries. And then she's like, oh, but I'll make an exception for you. So she goes to deliver the food. She finds the woman like dead in her kitchen from the gas from the stove, which didn't make sense. I don't know how a stove could like cause carbon monoxide, but anyways, she's dead and then they're accused of the murder. So they're trying to solve that. So that is that mystery. The next one is Simple Lies by Jan Fields, and that is number 3 in the Amish in Mysteries. And this is the first time that I have ever met an Amish cozy mystery I did not like. I gave this book a 2, which is saying a lot because as soon as you say like Amish cozy mystery, like I'm there and I probably am going to give it a 5. Like already in my mind when I hear Amish cozy mysteries, I'm like, I love this. I can't wait to read it. I really like this. So here's 2 of the reasons I didn't like it. 1, it really had nothing to do with Amish anything. It supposedly is an Amish inn. She's not Amish. There were no real Amish people in the book. And then the second thing is she's like a huge doormat. It is like the poster child main character for anti-feminism and just being wimpy and not being able to stand up for yourself. So basically she has this inn. She gets a mean person coming in that's super rude to her, and then after that her ex-boyfriend who she hates, also a super jerk, she has to let him stay there, which didn't make any sense to me. Like it's your own inn. You could be like, we like all over the time are like all over the place. Whenever you go to a restaurant it always says we reserve the right to refuse service. Like that's just how it is. So for whatever reason she gets bullied into letting him stay there, and then he like keeps intruding on her life. And so I think you're supposed to feel sorry for her that like she has all these mean people around her, but instead I was just annoyed that she's such a loser and she can't just stand up for herself. Anyways, in addition to that, the other reason it got a 2 is because it has like a serial killer vibe to it. So all of the local residents, including her, get body parts delivered to them in packages. Like it's so macabre and disgusting. And so yeah, that, and just so you know, there's a spoiler, so close your ears if you don't want to hear this, but the ending was terrible. I cannot stand endings where the killer is like mentally insane, like cuckoo crazy. Like why bother writing an entire mystery with clues and logic if like the killer is going to be some like Norman Bates kind of character who is like lost touch with reality. So anyways, that's all I'll say about that. So the next one is On Borrowed Crime by Kate Young. And this is number 1 in the Jane Doe Book Club Mysteries. And I gave this book a 2, mostly because I was really confused because they're a true crime like book club group and they call themselves the Jane Does, which is fine, whatever. But 2 things. 1, it was just really boring. And also it like, I don't even know who wrote this, but it reads like the main character is a 60-year-old spinster. However, she's really like 31 or something, and she hasn't figured out what she wants to do in life. She has no direction, and her parents are like harping on her, which at first I was really confused. I was like, why are her parents harping on her when she's 60 years old? But apparently she's 31 or something like that in the book. So anyway, so that was a 2. The next book is Crime and Punctuation by Kaitlyn Dunnett, and this is number 1 in Deadly Edits, and I gave this book a 2 as well. I thought this would be really cute because it had such a cute cover, and I've been meaning to read this for like a long time. She is an editor and she is retired, but she's not making enough money from retirement, so she thinks she can make some extra money doing edits for authors. And like it goes through, which maybe I found this boring too because I already understand. She's like, these are the types of edits I do and here's how much I charge. I was like, this is a total snooze fest. Anyway, so this woman comes up to her door, which I don't even know how she found her door. What is this? This is published in 2018. There's no such thing as the white pages. Like nobody knows where you physically live anymore. Anyways, so this woman comes up to her door and was like, can you read my novel? And it's on like paper, and she hands her a big stack of papers where I guess she's either printed them or put them on a typewriter. I don't even know. So she starts editing the book, and then the next day the police come over and she's dead. And so she has to figure out why she's dead, and then they want a copy of the manuscript. I don't know. It was kind of boring, and that's all I have to say about that. And so the last book is Feint of Art by Hailey, Lind, and Juliet Blackwell. I don't know if that's like her pen name, but it's number 1 in an art lover's mystery. And I gave this book a 1. So here's the reason I gave this book a 1. So this is supposed to be about an art thief. And so whenever you read a heist book, you're expecting like someone who's slick, someone who's clever, someone who's smart and thinking of things that like you would never think of. But instead what you get is this character, and I don't even know why you would make her an art thief, who's like an idiot, like that helpless damsel in distress waiting for some man to come up and save her, which is basically what happened in the book, except the man that saves her is a total jerk, steals all of her money and leaves her stranded. And then at the end of the book, she's like, oh, I love him so much, I'm going to fly to Chicago to be with him. And I was like, wow, just when I thought the book could not get any worse, it did go like another level of like awfulness. But basically, it's set in, I believe, San Francisco. Yeah, she's set in San Francisco. She doesn't have any friends. It's very cliche where her grandfather is an art forger and teaches her how to forge art. And even though she's 14, somehow she's like super talented, which like, again, I didn't really believe it, as well as the fact that like, it just seemed kind of contrived, like how awesome she is, even though she acts kind of stupid. So yeah, so that's that book. So anyways, that's a wrap for all the books that I read for the month of September. We had a bunch of duds in there, but we had a bunch of good books as well. So yeah, that's my list. All right. I hopefully will be reading a ton more books October, November, December. So my goal for this year, like I started out originally, it was like 100 books for the year. Then I made it 200 and now it's 300. So at this point right now, I'm at like 200 and some books, like 211. So not a lot. So I have like almost 100 books I need to read between now and the end of the year, which is like at least 1 book a day, if not 2. So fingers crossed that I can make it. So we'll see how it goes. Because I really want to do a wrap up like next year of like, what are the best books? What were the worst books? And I feel like if you haven't read a lot of books, like you can't honestly give a good opinion on what you think are the best and the worst. And so, yeah. And plus I just love reading, and it's like a good stretch goal, especially since I read 10 books last year. So this would be a vast improvement. All right. I hope everyone's having a fabulous Tuesday, and I will talk to you guys next week. Bye.